The Capitals' winning streak grinds to a halt.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the SiriusXM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. I would love to talk Capitals hockey with you one-on-one, and we can do that on subtext. Just check the show description for more details. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about how the Capitals winning streak grinds to a halt at 3 games. What's behind their loss tonight? I'll talk about that a little bit later. We'll talk about that despite the fact that the Capitals lost this game in quite a horrible fashion, that Alex Ovechkin was a key contributor. And then a little bit later, we will talk about the Capitals' road ahead. But talking about the game tonight, it was a tough one. I didn't think that the Maple Leafs were going to give the Capitals so many problems, but they did it because they have so much offensive firepower. It was a tough game to watch, and there were points in the game that I thought, hey, they might be able to sneak back in here. Hey, they might do it. But the Toronto Maple Leafs were simply too much. And of course, I was hoping that the Capitals would be able to continue winning, but the winning streak came to an end tonight. The Capitals' winning streak came to a grinding halt as they fall to the Leafs by a score of 7-3. Now, there were times I thought the Caps could turn it around, but Auston Matthews and the lethal Leafs offense was too much for the Capitals. Yes, even Charlie Lindgren couldn't save the Capitals in this one. And to be honest with you, this was not one of Charlie Lindgren's finest hours, but we can talk a little bit later about what went behind the loss and Charlie Lindgren and the defense. But, a tough game, suffices to say. And if you watched it, the first 2 periods, pretty good. And then towards the end of the second period, that wheel really started to wobble there a little bit. But there were points that I thought that maybe they could do it. And kind of like how I've talked about in the show, it's like they stick to the script in their head when things are going well. But then when they're under duress and things aren't going well, they're kind of in fight or flight mode. And we saw a bit of that in the Capitals tonight. But it wasn't easy as the Maple Leafs threw it at the Capitals in a hurry. Matthews scored 17 seconds into the game. They said that many of the people didn't even get a chance to sit down. They were just, getting settled and ready for the game. And right away, Auston Matthews just doing what he does best and scores goals on the regular. I think that if there is one modern player that could challenge Alex Ovechkin and Wayne Gretzky, it would be Auston Matthews, as he is lethal out there, as was evident tonight. He now has 57 goals on the season. And like I talked about, honestly, I thought the Capitals, the first 2 periods, I would say the first period, and then, I would say the second half of the period of the second period was pretty good, but then things didn't go well. The wheel started to wobble towards the end of the second. Toronto outshot DC 14-7. And that's not a formula for winning games ultimately. And that's, the pushback that the Capitals didn't have that, was evident at other points, but a tough game for the Capitals, and it's all about rising above. And tonight was not one of the days or the games that the Capitals found a way to rise above, but it's all about, brushing your shoulders off and trying to get ready for the next round because again, and I'll talk about later, the schedule does not get any easier for the Capitals. But talking about what went wrong, too much time on the PK. The Capitals were under duress, and they were trying to kill off too many penalties. that was tough. If I'm going to talk about good points in the game, the power play now has goals in 11 of the last 13. So, I mean, if you take a look at the box score, you think to yourself, it was just this glaring, horrible, horrible loss. And make no mistake about it, it was not one of their finest hours. But there were some bright spots in the game, if you can actually believe it. It's just about, like I say, brushing your shoulders off and getting ready for the next one and trying to find a way to be better in the next game. But talking about the goals for the Maple Leafs, the Leafs got goals, two of them, Auston Matthews, Nylander, Tavares, Bertuzzi, McCabe, and McMahon all scored goals. Other bright spots for the Capitals, Carlson had 4 shots on goal, and Chucky Sideburns, in not one of his finest hours, saved 22 of 29. And we could argue about, does it fall squarely on Charlie Lindgren's shoulders, or are there circumstances that surrounded it? Well, of course, there are circumstances that surrounded it. The defense was not the most stout that I've ever seen, but just being an accurate assessor of the game, in my opinion, it was not one of Charlie Lindgren's best games. But like I said, to be fair, it's not totally his fault. It wasn't like the Capitals defense was totally dialed in. Connor McMichael found the back of the net and just a really sweet goal kind of behind the net and kind of banked it off the goalie there. And Alex Ovechkin, who I'll talk about a little bit later in the show, did his level best to try to keep the Capitals in there as he scored 2 goals. But talking about Connor McMichael scores his 15th goal of the season to make it 3-2. McMichael has scored 4 goals in his last 5 games. So this youth movement, it's not dead. It's just the team as a whole. The Capitals did not play very well tonight. There were glimpses there were peaks, if you will, of greatness. Like I talked about Connor McMichael, talking about the PP, Alex Ovechkin, that there were things that were good, if I'm going to look at the good and the bad, but there was a lot of bad as well. And that was too much time on the penalty kill. Not a really great game by Charlie Lindgren, and just being on your heels from the moment the puck dropped. That was a difficult thing for the Capitals to overcome. They did, but with Auston Matthews scoring his first goal of the game so quickly, and he nearly scored a hat trick, you got to kind of feel bad to a certain extent for all the people that lost their hats over not a legitimate hat trick. I really don't feel bad, but you know what I'm talking about. It's a silly thing, and I did it when I saw Alex Ovechkin play in Minnesota. He got a hat trick. I threw my hat out on the ice, and I thought to myself, that was a really expensive hat. I don't know if that was a good idea, but the trend continues, and the Toronto Maple Leafs fans, there were quite a few in attendance at Capital One Arena. But just taking a look at the game, try to brush it off, try to work on the next thing, because if you dwell too much on negativity that this team isn't playing well, then you're going to spiral out of control. We're taking a look that they came off 3 really big wins on a really tough road trip, and this is a first loss, and you can't win them all, as they say. It's just about trying to fix what is wrong and try to be ready for your next opponent. All right, so coming up here after the break, we will talk about Alex Ovechkin, that it wasn't one of the Capitals' finest hours, but Alex Ovechkin, the captain of your Washington Capitals, showed up to play. I'll discuss coming up. Passion, drive, and patience, what brings home the winning trophy, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED lights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. As you know, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today. Baseball fans, mark your calendars for March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern for the best MLB season preview coming exclusively to Locked On Sports Today on March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern. Be the first to get local insights from the MLB local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Find it on March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And now that I just read that, I am recording this after that, but check out Locked On Sports Today. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So again, not a really great night for the Capitals. You know, you can take glimpses, peaks of greatness in there, but Alex Ovechkin was dialed in and ready to play. He did his level best to keep the Capitals in there. He was trying to grab that bull by the horns and say, come on, guys, we can do it. It was just too much. The lethal offense of the Toronto Maple Leafs was too much. And, you got to give it to them. And on occasion, you just have to say, hey, they were the better team tonight. And there was no real denying it that the Maple Leafs showed up to play and were the better team. But talking about Alex Ovechkin and his night, he continues to play so great. After the All-Star break, kind of just defying goals. Ovechkin is now 49 goals shy of tying Wayne Gretzky's 894 for the first on the NHL's all-time goals list. So that's what I'm talking about this season. It's been an up and down season all around, but there's, the Capitals still trying to push to get into the playoffs. And Alex Ovechkin continues to chase down the great one, the great eight, chasing down the great one, Wayne Gretzky. Alex Ovechkin did his best to play Superman by contributing to the Caps offense, but getting the Capitals' first goal of the night. 15 goals in his last 22 games. A complete about face for Alex Ovechkin. Oftentimes I'll talk about that. If I had told you that, in the beginning of the season when he was off to such a slow start that it defied logic that there was going to be any way that he was going to be able to turn it around, he has turned it around. And, the Capitals' rise and fall this season, it will be led by Alex Ovechkin's goal scoring, his leadership. I'm still not, going to abandon the ship because the Capitals lost tonight. It's just, they really needed to win this game because of the schedule. And I'll talk a bit more about that in the next segment. But Ovi continues to defy odds, I guess is what I'm going to say about it. Alex Ovechkin scores his 22nd goal of the season on the power play. That was to start it off to cut the Capitals deficit 2-1. Ovechkin extends his point streak to 3 games. Just a huge thing for Alex Ovechkin. Ovi has scored 15 goals in his last 22 games. In addition, Ovechkin has recorded 33 points, 16 goals, 17 assists in his last 32 games. And it had to be kind of a tough night for Alex Ovechkin, as we know who he is. And I don't think there's oftentimes players out there that will challenge his offensive prowess, his goal scoring prowess, his capabilities. But he was with elite company tonight against Auston Matthews, and it had to be an interesting thing for him, as to be kind of challenged in a situation where, generally speaking, we enter into a game and there's nobody in the room that's nearly as good as Ovechkin. I think Auston Matthews is that guy. Ovechkin is currently on pace for 26 goals. Ovechkin has scored 25 or more goals in 17 of his 18 completed seasons, with a shortened 2020-21 campaign being the only season in which he did not reach the 25 goal mark, but a shortened season as well. Continues to knock it out of the park, though. And the one thing I'm going to say, the second goal in particular, that was Dylan Strom's goal. And, I'm glad that Alex Ovechkin scored the goal. And had it been a game that was closer, I would have been like, Dylan Strome, what are you doing? That was your goal. You were right in front of the crease there, and you shot it to Ovechkin. And luckily, he scored a goal. But part of me was like, okay, it's okay that it worked. But had that not worked, I mean, Dylan Strome, what are you doing out there? Ovi did his best to keep the Capitals in the game and score goals, and he did as best as he can. Ovechkin, who scored 2 goals on Monday at Calgary, has recorded back-to-back multi-goal games. So the Capitals and Alex Ovechkin leading the charge continues to be clutch. Not clutch enough to win, but all things considered, there were moments, in particular earlier in the game, that I thought Alex Ovechkin was going to be the guy to lead the charge for the Capitals and take them and pick up another win. But a tough one for the Capitals in Washington. They're back home. And I thought this one I didn't think was going to give them problems. But as it turns out, the Leafs, who, I mean, to be a fair assessor, aren't the worst team out there. They're a team that has, made their push for the playoffs for multiple years. It just seems that when they make it to the final dance, or at least the playoffs, shall we say, they always fall short. There is no team out there that I can think of that would love their team to win another Stanley Cup more than Toronto. They love their team, and ultimately they are trending in the right direction. Again, I don't think the Capitals are out of it by any stretch. It just got more difficult, but the one thing I know is this team excels. It does well, and Alex Ovechkin can only do so much. He can't play goalie. He can't be on the blue line exclusively. He has to be the guy scoring goals, assisting on goals, and he did his best to rally the troops. You saw him chewing out Sonny Milano. I'm not exactly sure what he did, but I think, from watching the game, they wanted Sonny Milano, or Alex Ovechkin wanted Sonny Milano posted up a little bit more in front of the net, and he wasn't. And it's interesting that Sonny Milano has, been chewed out by Alex Ovechkin before. So I don't know, if there's kind of a rift between the two of those guys. But whatever the case is, this is the second time in particular I can think of that Sonny Milano has been chewed out by Alex Ovechkin. Has to be kind of an intimidating situation, I got to imagine. But that's the big thing for tonight. I'm taking a look at the good, taking a look at the bad. I know that some people watch this show and listen to it, and they're like, you're talking about the bad. Listen, when I do this show, I have to tell you guys about the good things that happened and the bad things that happened. And the Capitals got outworked, but there were some good things. Like I talked about Ovi being clutch for the team and the power play. But it's all building blocks and not taking it too hard that it's all over and, ready to wave the white flag. There's just things that they need to work on. All right. So coming up here after the break, we will talk about the road ahead. With what I just said there, the road does not get any easier for the Capitals. What lies ahead? I'll discuss straight ahead. You shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all in prices and views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets, and if there's one thing that irritates me, it's that when my favorite band comes to town, or say I want last-minute tickets to this sporting event or that sporting event, I can't find it. It's confusing. Take the confusion out of it with Game Time. It makes buying tickets that much easier, so take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Capitals had a good road trip, all things considered. It started off pretty rocky, I got to say. When you take a look at the falling to the Jets, they fell to the Oilers, but picking up big wins over the Kraken, the Canucks. So, I mean, it was not all lost. And Calgary, that was another one that kind of pushed them over the top. So I'm going to say that the game tonight was a setback. And I think that that is a fair thing to say. And taking a look at playoff odds, I've been kind of looking at this since the game is over because that's what it's all about at the end of the day. So this is from moneypuck.com. This was updated Wednesday, March 20th. At 11:13 p.m. Eastern time, and they have the Capitals' odds of making it to the playoffs here at 41.4%. Before the game, it was 51%. So that's what I'm talking about is, they really should have won the game tonight. And all of a sudden, you take a look at Detroit, they're in it as well. So it is going to be a dogfight towards the end of the season, but a game of significance. And oftentimes people say it is just a game. Well, touche. It is just a game, but they started the night being a 51, approximately 51% odds of making it to the playoffs, and currently are now 41.4% according to MoneyPuck.com. And if you want to kind of widen the lens a little bit more, say they do make it to the playoffs, according to this website, making it to round 2, 6.1, making it to the third round, 1%, and making it to the final here, 0.2, and the odds of winning the cup for the Capitals. Again, according to this website, this is not the Bible of hockey, but it's, a notable source, 0%. Again, yeah, and I can't, I can't emphasize this enough. Is these games, people will say you can win some, you can lose some. They're just games, and that's an attitude that you can take towards the beginning of the season. But at the point of the season that we're at right now, the Capitals can't afford to lose a couple here. If you lose a couple of games, it's over. It's over. But, not out of it. But again, they did not do themselves any favors by losing tonight. So they're really going to have to batten down the hatches, as they go ahead. This was a game the Caps needed to win, as their schedule doesn't get any easier for the Capitals. They face Carolina, who was one of the better teams in the NHL. Winnipeg, well, we saw how that went the first time. Detroit, we saw how that went the first time. In Toronto again. It's going to be tough. And then Boston in that mix as well. So the Capitals are going to have to bring their A game, their A+ game, if that is such a thing, because it is going to be a tough thing for the Capitals to make it to the playoffs, period. And not impossible. I mean, what is one of the things that we've learned from their most recent road trip here is there were some games that no one had them circled to win. I'm talking about the Canucks. No one really had them circled beating the Canucks. We knew the Oilers were going to be tough. They lost to them. So, I didn't think that the Maple Leafs were going to give the Capitals as much fits as they did, but they did. And the Capitals lost a game of quite a bit of significance. Again, to recite what Money Puck said here, quite a dip, a roughly 10%, shall we say, a dip in where they were before the game began. So a tough thing for the Capitals. It's going to be an uphill battle if they have any hopes of making it to the playoffs. So again, they're just going to have to be ready for the task at hand. And, hopefully, I know that they were missing some key players. Oshie and Protas were out of the game. That hopefully they'll be back. But, do I think the Capitals would have won if Oshie and Protas were in there? Probably not. No, I don't think that would have made a tremendous difference. I think it may have had negligible help to the game, but I don't think it would have been a difference maker. And, the thing of it is that the Capitals had their grade A netminder in the game. He just simply was not enough. And why wasn't he enough? That's the difficult question to take a look at. But then the thing of it is how do they overcome, and how do they get themselves in a position that they're back in it? Again, they were riding such a high after winning Calgary that in one game, put a nail in the side of the tire for the Capitals. Now, I believe that they do have some fix-a-flat in the trunk that could save the day. But they're going to have to avoid those potholes or avoid those people that have nails that want to stick them in the side of your tires if they have any hopes of wanting to make it to the playoffs. But that's where we're at, Capitals fans, just kind of laying out the battlefield as it is. But the schedule is going to be tough. Carolina is not going to be easy on the Capitals. The Jets, those kind of teams bring their A game because they want to continue with their success. They don't want to drop any standings points. And it was just a tough loss for the Capitals. Again, you got to kind of just lick your wounds, brush off your shoulders, and get ready for the next one because it doesn't get any easier. Listen, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are ultimately what makes this show successful. And again, if you haven't done so already, make sure and subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube. I want to say we are at 995 subscribers. Let's see if we can get it up to 1,000. That would be great. More content coming for you guys. With the more followers, it's just more incentive for everyone all the way around to kind of just keep pushing this engine for YouTube, for Locked On Capitals, and make it bigger. So say you are a person that listens to it primarily on Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen to. Most every smartphone has YouTube on it. Even if you listen to it, for one, thank you for listening to it. But if you could do me a favor, just push the YouTube tab and go to type in Locked On Capitals and hit subscribe. That would really help the channel grow that much more, and I really would appreciate it. So once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.